asked you to tell me about yourself, would your job be one of the first things you mentioned? Because it always was for me. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because somewhere along the way, I had stopped describing who I was and started describing what I did. If you had asked me about a year ago to tell you about myself, I probably would have told you about my career, my degrees, my certifications, the position I had worked really hard to earn, the accomplishments I was proud of. But if you had asked me who I was underneath all of that, I don't think I would have known how to answer. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. If you've ever felt stuck in a career that no longer feels aligned, or you've realized your job title has quietly become your identity, I'm sharing 5 of the biggest lessons I learned while redefining myself outside of my career. And you know what? Lesson 4 is the one that helped me get over my Sunday scaries and stop crying in my car every Monday morning. But before we jump in, if you're someone who is learning how to build a deeper relationship with themselves through self-discovery, through self-intimacy, and the everyday moments that help us become a little bit more ourselves, I hope you'll stick around. Consider subscribing and joining me every other week as we figure this out together. Now, let's talk about why I let my career become my identity. About a year ago, I can look back on that version of myself and confidently say that I was a different person. My sense of self was so shattered that I felt like a stranger in my own life. I had trouble even looking at myself in the mirror. And one of the biggest reasons for that was that I had allowed my career to become my identity. And I thought I was the only one feeling this way. But then I realized it's a trap that many of us were handed from day one, especially for millennials. We grew up with a very specific message. Go to school, work hard, get the degree, get the stable job, build the successful career. And somehow, somewhere along the way, success stopped being something we achieved and started becoming who we were. At least it did for me. I was the reliable one, the one with the plan. I started believing that if I was successful professionally, then I was successful personally. And if I wasn't fulfilled professionally, then maybe something was wrong with me. The crazy thing is, on paper, everything looked fine. But about 3 years into my career, I started noticing that I didn't feel fulfilled, or not nearly as fulfilled as I thought I would. I kept waiting for the feeling of purpose to arrive, as if this choice I had made on my career, on making it my life's goal, was going to become my purpose or was my purpose. That feeling never arrived. Like one day I will wake up and just think like, yep, this is it. But that feeling never came. Instead, I found myself burnt out and questioning everything. And after a few years of not feeling fulfilled, I thought that just by changing where I was, the location, that it would help me refocus and realign myself toward what I thought was my purpose, which was my career. And every time I went to a new location, I realized that I ended up repeating the same cycle. I would leave one job and move to another, convincing myself that all I needed was a fresh start. I thought new environment, new faces, new opportunity, then somehow I would be a new me and find myself, attain this quote unquote purpose. Except it wasn't a new me. It was the same me with the same patterns and the same feelings that something was missing. But it wasn't. I didn't realize that every time I changed positions, I wasn't looking for a new position. I was looking for myself. I realized I couldn't keep repainting the walls of a house that needed a new foundation. I needed to figure out who I was outside of my career. And if I'm being really honest, that was terrifying. All this time, I thought identity was tied to my career, and now I had to redefine who I was outside of it. And if any of that sounds familiar to you, the exhaustion, the questioning, the feelings like you're performing a version of yourself that doesn't actually exist, I want you to know that you aren't alone. For me, removing that career label felt like losing my skin. It was terrifying. But it was also the first time I was actually forced to look at who I was. It was the first time I had to actually force myself to look at myself underneath it all. And After all that soul searching, these are the 5 lessons that helped me find my footing when I felt like I had no title to stand on. Lesson 1. Your career is something you do. It's not who you are. One of the biggest lessons I learned is that your career is something you do. It is not who you are. Your career may use your talents and pay the bills, but it is not your entire identity. It is a dangerous expectation to place on any job because no promotion, paycheck, or title can tell you who you are. The only person who can answer that question is you. Lesson 2. You're never as stuck as you think you are, even if you've invested years into something. I know how it is because you think about the time, the money, the effort, the years perhaps of schooling, the debt they may have incurred because of said career that you're pursuing. But every role you've ever had has given you skills. You are never just a cashier or just a manager or just a teacher. You are never starting over. You're starting from experience. Your experiences guide you and give you new lines on your resume. One thing I do want to say though is don't confuse a leap of faith with jumping without a parachute. Social media romanticizes quitting your job with no plan, but for most of us, that's not realistic. Create a plan. Save some money. Buy yourself time. Lesson 3. Don't lose tomorrow reaching back for yesterday. I spent so much time thinking about what I should have done differently, other things I could have studied while I was in school, other degrees I could have taken on. But you can't build tomorrow while constantly reaching back for yesterday. The past has lessons, but it is not a place to live. Today's opportunity deserves your attention more than yesterday's regret. Lesson 4, and this is the big one. None of it was wasted. This is the one I hold on to the most. None of it was wasted. Not the burnout, not the mistakes, or the moments I cried in my car wondering what I was doing with my life. I started to really think about those experiences, sort of like, as gross as this may sound because it stinks, I started to think about it like fertilizer. And yes, fertilizer stinks. It's messy and it's uncomfortable, but it nourishes growth. Some of the most beautiful things in our lives grow from the messiest seasons. You are the person you are today because of those seasons, not despite them. Lesson 5, your job will move on, so don't forget to live. This took me so long. Like, I'm ashamed to admit how long this took me to realize how important it is. No matter how dedicated you are replaceable at work. The machine keeps moving. Positions get filled. While you're pouring everything into your work, your life is still happening. Your family, your health, your peace, and your joy are happening now. Take your days off. Protect your boundaries. Don't look back and realize your life happened while you were busy trying to prove your worth through your job title. The truth is, the machine will always be there, but your time and your peace won't be. When I finally accepted that I was replaceable at work, it didn't make me feel small. It actually made me feel free. It freed me up to finally realize that the most important work I will ever do isn't something I can put on a resume. It's the work of building a life I actually want to be present for. And looking at my life today, the answer to who am I is much more beautiful than a job title could ever be. Today, I still have a career. I still care about meaningful work. I still consider myself an educator. I'm a wife. I'm a creator. I'm a friend. Those roles matter to me. They're part of my life. They're just no longer the place I go to look for myself. Because underneath all of those titles are things that have followed me through every season of my life. I'm curious. I care deeply about people. I value authenticity. I love learning. I love connecting with others. I try to approach life with compassion. I believe in growth, and whether I'm an educator, a creator, or something completely different 10 years from now, those things remain. And maybe that's the difference. I used to ask my career to tell me who I was. Now I let my values guide how I show up within my career. That's completely different relationship. Because who I am isn't found in a title. It's found in the values I carry, the relationships I nurture, the way I show up for people, and the relationships I'm building with myself. Those things remain even when the titles change. So if you've been feeling disconnected lately, I want to leave you with a question. If someone took away your job title tomorrow, how would you describe yourself? What would you do? Not what you've achieved, not the roles you play for everyone else. Who are you? Because maybe self-intimacy begins with the moment we stop asking our careers to tell us who we are and start getting curious enough to discover it for ourselves. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What are your values that follow you through every season of your life? And if you're on your own journey of self-discovery, don't forget to like and subscribe. Join me here each week as we learn to build a deeper relationship with ourselves, one conversation at a time. I'll see you in the next one, familia. Nos vemos.